All right, good afternoon, third grade. So today we are going to be reviewing some place value and then learning something new. So before we start that, I have two equations that I'm going to write on the board. And after I write them, I want to see if anyone in our class notices a big difference between the two equations that I write. Here's equation 1, and here's equation 2. Can anyone raise their hand and tell me if they notice a big difference between these two? Something that stands out to them? Pardon?
Problem 2 has zeros at the end.
Problem 2 has zeros at the end. So class, if you would rather answer problem 1, I want you to remain sitting. If you would rather answer problem 2, I want you to stand up. So I'm noticing that everyone in our class stood up because they wanted to answer problem 2. Go ahead and sit back down. Can someone else raise their hand and tell me why did you want to solve number 2? What about equation 2 made you want to solve it, Sierra?
The ones place has zeros, so it's easier to add.
Yes. Equation 2 has a much friendlier numbers in it. We would have to do one step to add them. We would just have to look at our tens place and we could know right away that it is 90. We wouldn't have to carry any tens places. We wouldn't have to do any of that craziness. We could just do it easily in our heads. So I'm wondering, today we are going to be talking about how to round to the nearest 10. Now, why might we want to round a number? Where might it help us to use friendly numbers like this? When could that help us in math or somewhere else? Any ideas? Rachel? You don't know? When you're at the store maybe, sometimes it's easier to figure out how much of something you're gonna buy or how much money you need if you see that it ends in zeros. Yeah? Does anyone else feel the same way? I feel that way. It can also help us to check our work and figure out if an answer is really close to what we're thinking. It can also help us if we just don't need to find an approximate exact amount. So, as I said, today we're going to work on learning how to round to the nearest 10, but before we do that, we are going to review and make sure that we all know our place values. So I have a 3-digit number up on the board, and I want someone to raise their hand and let me know which digit here is in the ones place. Hannah, which digit here is in the ones place?
5.
The 5. Can someone else raise their hand and tell me which one is in our tens place? Carly?
The 8.
The 8 is in the tens place. And last one, our 7 is in the hundreds place. Now you all have been doing such a good job when we've been reviewing and working on our place values, and that is going to be something that's really important to remember when we start doing our rounding. So I passed out a worksheet to you all that we are going to be taking some notes on, so you can go ahead and flip that over. Go ahead and flip that over, and we are going to work on filling this out together. So it's up here on the board as well. Hopefully you all can see that. So we are going to go over the 3 steps that are going to help us round to the nearest 10. Can someone read for me step 1 before we fill in our blank? Tabitha, can you read for me step 1?
Identify the number in the blank place and circle it.
Step 1 is going to be identify the number in the tens place and circle it. So we're writing tens under step 1. Can someone else volunteer to read step 2 for me? Jessie.
Look at the number to its blank and underline it.
We are going to look at the number to its right and underline it. And then step 3 has 2 parts. I'll go ahead and read it for us. If that number is 4 or lower, change it to 0. If it is 5 or more, add add 1 to the number in the tens place and change the number in the ones place to 0. And then we're going to ignore the bottom of our paper for right now. We will get to that in just a little bit. But these steps, I want you to keep in your math journal to reference whenever you need extra help with remembering how to round. So, before we do anything else, I am going to show you our first problem. Our first problem is going to be the number, these markers are frustrating, class. Our first number is going to be 538. So I'm going to use the steps that we just filled out together as a class to round this number to the nearest 10. So my first step is to identify the number in the tens place and to circle it. I see that the number 3 is in my tens place. So I'm going to find 3 and I'm going to circle it. Step number 2 says that I need to look at the number to its right and underline it. 8 is the number to the right of 3. 5 is the number to the left of 3. So I'm looking for the number to its right, which is our 8, which is in the ones place, and I'm going to underline that number. Then I'm moving on to step 3, class. Step 3 says that if that number is 4 or lower, I'm going to change it to a 0. So I'm going to look at my 8 and I'm going to ask, is 8 4 or lower? I'm going to say no. So I need to keep going. The next part says that if it is 5 or more, I look at 8. I know that 8 is greater than 5. So it's 5 or more. I'm going to continue on. It says add 1 to the number in the tens place, the circled number. So I'm going to add 1 to 3, making it a 4, and change the number in the ones place to a 0. And then I'll bring down my number in the hundreds place because it does not change. So my rounded number is 540. Now, class, some of you may be asking, well, why is my 3 becoming a 4? That may seem a little bit confusing. So we're going to look at it on a number line just to help it make a little bit more sense. So if we have 538, what we're asking is 538 closer to 530 or to 540? It's somewhere in between those two, and we're trying to find out which one it's closer to, because that's what we're doing when we're rounding. We're rounding it to the closer number so that we can get a better guess. So I see that 538 is higher than 535. 535 is exactly in the middle of 530 and 540. So my 538 would go right about here on our number line. And so if I see it on my number line, I can see that it's much closer to 540 than it is to 530. Does that make a little bit more sense? So I want you to look back at your worksheet that we have, and we are going to read together this rounding rhyme that's going to help us remember how to round. So we're going to read it out loud together from the very beginning. It says, find the digit, look next door, 5 or higher, add 1 more, 4 or less, let it rest. Very good. So now we're going to do a problem together. Make sure that we really have it. We are going to round 783 to the nearest 10. So we have our first step again. We're identifying the number in the tens place. What number is in the tens place? Someone raise their hand and tell me, please. Alex.
8.
8. What am I going to do with 8, Alex?
Circle.
I'm going to circle it. Can someone else raise their hand? Step 2 says look at the number to its right and underline it. Which number is to the right of our 8? Sierra?
The 3.
The 3. So we're going to underline our 3. Our next step, if that number is 4 or lower, change it to a 0. If it is 5 or more, add 1 to the number in the tens place and change the number in the ones place to a 0. That's a lot of information. Let's start with the first part. And I want you to show me thumbs up or thumbs down. Thumbs up if our number is 4 or lower. Thumbs down if it is 5 or more. Thumbs up if it is 4 or lower. Thumbs down if it's 5 or more. I see everyone has their thumbs up telling me that it is 4 or lower. So what are we going to do to this number? It is 4 or lower. What are we going to do?
Let it rest.
We're going to let it rest. So we're going to change it to a 0. We're going to let our 10 rest. We're going to change our 3 to a 0. Keep our 10, let it rest. And our final number is going to be 780. So class, you guys are going to take this exit slip home and work on it and bring it back to class tomorrow. And this slip just has some extra practice that we'll go over at the very beginning of our morning meeting tomorrow. And that's it.